said, stick by me, you'll be your guiding hand. But don't ask me what I think of you, I might not give the answer that you want me to.
Howdy, I'm Joe, and this is my show, Joe's Rides. In these videos, myself and my glamorous assistant Caden will show you what we get up to in my workshop in town, repairing mostly Land Rovers, along with a few classic cars, hot rods, American cars, all sorts. We'll also do some videos from my workshops at home, where you will see some of my projects, more cars, bikes, hot rods, odds and sods, you name it. So if you like petrol, oil, dirt and beer, then tune in. If you're a bit woke, left wing, if you believe in climate change or you're vegan, then fuck off!
Today we've got this job in. This is a Defender TD5 130 double cab pickup. For anyone who's interested, I'm certainly not, the 130 gets its name from its wheelbase. So that is the distance between the front and the rear wheel is 130 inches. Going all the way back to 1948 at the development and conception of the first Land Rover. Land Rover named the Series 1 the 80 inch because of its wheelbase. It was then followed by an 86 inch model, 88 inch model, there was a 109, and then eventually they came to this shape that we know, which was called the 90, also a 110, which was the long wheelbase brother, and a 127, and the biggest one they do, or the longest one they do, is this, is the 130, and this is what we've got in today. Only just fits on the ramp really. It's quite a big car. This has been brought to me because it's failed its MOT. The guy told me on the phone it failed its MOT on a fuel leak. I immediately knew what the problem would be, and the problem will be the fuel pressure regulator. Obviously, if it's a fuel leak at the front, that's what it's going to be. If it's a fuel leak at the back, of course, it could be something else. But he told me it had failed its MOT on a leak from the engine area. So I'm 99.9% sure that it will be the fuel pressure regulator, which is fairly common on one of these. So I'll just sort of show you where it is and tell you a little bit more about it, and then we'll do the job. So first things first is you need to remove the acoustic cover, and we've already taken the 3 bolts out, which only takes a couple of minutes. We can get rid of that. Now the fuel pressure regulator is a little bit of a fiddle, so be prepared to lose a little bit of bark off the back of your knuckles and a little bit of swearing. But here it is, just here at the back of the engine, and this genuinely is the first time I've looked at it, and you can see that it's all wet there. So it's held on there with 3 8mm bolts and a few pipes. So we'll get stuck in there, get those bolts and pipes off, pull it out, and then get it on the bench, and we can show you it later. I can show you a new one over here. So this is a new one we're going to fit. It comes with the pipework. I don't actually change this pipework. I can't see any good reason why, really. I mean, you could look at it as though, well, it comes with it, so why not? But it's quite a lot more work to actually change this out. So what we do is we take these pipes out on the bench, and then it will just leave the fuel pressure regulator itself there to change over, and we'll use the existing pipes on the car. Of course, if there is a problem with any of the pipework, then we would change it, but I've never seen or heard anyone having experienced any problems with the associated pipework. So we're just going to change the regulator itself. It has an electrical connector on it, and generally they will leak from around this area. Now, there's a few good reasons to change this when it's leaking. One can potentially cause you an MOT failure, which this one has. Secondly, you're losing a bit of fuel, but it is a negligible amount. It's not a lot. They only just drip a little bit here and there. But what can happen, more to the point, is the starter motor is located directly underneath the fuel pressure regulator, and left to its own devices, when this leaks, it will almost fill the starter motor up with diesel, and then your starter motor will fail. So a lot of the time we get TD5 Defenders or Discoveries in with a starter motor issue. Normally when I take the starter motor off, I'll find that it's been contaminated with diesel, and it will go hand in hand with changing one of these. So it all can work out quite expensive, actually. On the Discovery note, Discovery TD5 uses identical fuel pressure regulator, and it is an absolute bastard of a job to do. So I'm just giving you forewarning on that. Anyway, we'll get stuck in and we'll get the old one off and show you that. There we go. We've got the old fuel pressure regulator off now. As you can see now, it's on the bench. It's pretty grotty. So just a couple of things. We're going to fit that back on. It will come with a new tin gasket. You'll find things a lot easier if you move the rearmost engine lifting eye. That'll help you get to the fuel pressure regulator and associated pipe work a lot easier. Another thing that will also help you is if you take the sensor out of the old pressure regulator and the new one, that'll also help you get a spanner onto the pipes that you need to remove. When I put the new one on, I get an elastic band and put it around the 3 8mm bolts, and they'll hold them all in position while you wriggle this down, and then you can start the bolts in the cylinder head and remove the elastic band when you've got them started. Another thing to bear in mind is there's actually 2 versions of this, one for the earlier model and one for the later model. I don't know what year the changeover was. Most of them that we fit are for the later model, but the very first derivative of the TD5 used a different part number. The part number for this one, if you're going to order one for your car, is LRO 16318. So there we go. We'll get this back on now, and hopefully we'll be fuel leak free. Okay, so we've got the fuel pressure regulator now fitted, and we appear to be leak free on the diesel front. The back of the engine is all horrible and oily and grimy, as is the front, which is par for the course really with Land Rovers most of the time. So most of the wetness around the back of the engine was the fuel pressure regulator that we've just replaced. But I've also noticed that it's pretty grotty around the front as well. And another common source of oil leaks on a TD5 Defender is this. And this is the camshaft blanking bung in the front of the cam housing here. And you can see this bung's loose. And it's a hard plastic bung, and it's got a rubber O-ring on it. And over a period of time, that rubber O-ring seems to go hard, and then this bung becomes loose and starts hosing oil out all over the front of the engine. So we'll pop that old one out, and what I normally do with these replacement ones is just put a little bit of silicone sealer, just a tiny bit, smear around the O-ring and push that in, and that should cure his engine oil leaks at the front there. Another thing this guy's asked us to have a look at on this Defender is the fact that the central locking doesn't work on this door here. If you come around the back of me here, Caden. Now, quite a common thing on Defenders with central locking and electric windows, if you've got an electric window or central locking not working on one particular door, before you get excited around electric motors, central locking actuators, etc., I suggest that you pull this wiring loom out here between the A post or B post and the door itself. And what you'll find 9 times out of 10 is where the door's been opening and shutting like so, the wires in here will eventually break. So I'm going to have a look in there, and I'll put a pound to a penny. I'll find that the wires for the central locking have probably broken. So that leaves you 2 options. One, you can buy a door loom, or 2, you can attempt to repair what you've got. So I'll have a look and see how bad it is in there, and we'll come back. But I think that's where the problem for that will lie. Okay, so as I said, we was going to have a look at the problem with the central locking on this door, on this Defender, and I mentioned that I'd imagine that the wires inside the door loom are broken, and sure enough, they have broken clean off. But they have been repaired before. Someone has soldered them up and put a bit of masking tape around them. So, in light of the fact that they've already broken once before and now broken again, I think the best thing we'll do is replace this door loom. So there you go. Any problems with electric windows stroke central locking on Defenders fitted with such, have a look at the loom in the door first before you start pulling the door apart, and you'll probably find this is your problem. Well, it's Sunday morning and I'm here at the workshops at home, and today's little task is I finally got the bit of glass for the drop glass for the Model A. I ordered it in see-through, which I kind of like personally. Anyway, haven't got Caden here today, he doesn't come up on a Sunday. Bit selfish, I think, really. He works for me all week, comes up on a Saturday, and then on a Sunday it's like he wants his own life. Don't understand it. Have a bit of a word with his parents, I think, about it. Give him a bit of a bollocking on Monday. Anyway, so you'll have to bear with me as I try and film doing things. So what I'm going to do firstly is clean up this channel that the glass sits in, and then I'm going to have to put some sort of adhesive in there. It won't need a lot, because obviously as you wind the window up, the regulator pushes against the glass, and then when you wind it down, you've got gravity on your side. So I'll give that a good clean up. I've already lubed up the regulator, and then once I've got the glass in there with the adhesive in there, I'll give it a bit of a squeeze with some pliers or something similar to let that channel grip the bottom of the glass. So there we go, the drop glass is back in the door now. The window regulator's back in, which is now attached to the channel, which in turn is then now glued to the glass itself. So I just want to leave that adhesive to go off for sort of 20 minutes, half hour, and then I'll temporarily fit the window winder handle, the crank handle, make sure everything works as it should, which I'm fairly sure it will, and then if that is the case, then the top of the door frame can go back on along with the door card and all the furniture. Another job ticked. I would have normally put the car away to bed by now, but I've been waiting for this bit of glass. I was keen to put that in before I put the car away for winter. And there's another job I'd like to address, and that is when I got the car, it didn't have any front shock absorbers. What it did have was a rather nasty bracket on the chassis, which is not there now, which did lend itself to me just fitting a couple of motorbike type coilover shocks to the front. And the minute I did it, I didn't really like them, and I didn't particularly like the brackets that had previously been put on. Needless to say, one of the brackets broke, which in a way was a bit of yin and yang, because I didn't like the brackets. Whoever had made them didn't make a very good job of them, and I didn't really like the look of the shock absorbers that I fitted. So I was quite happy when it all sort of fell to bits in that respect. I've been driving the car with no front shock absorbers, and it doesn't seem to make any difference at all. There's no undue wobbles or shakes when I go over bumps or potholes, but I think I'm going to fit some. So I have these little classic mini shock absorbers, which I think are sort of quite in keeping, as they're just black and plain. So this morning I'm going to try and knock up a couple of more substantial brackets to bolt those to the front of the car. And then I can look at putting the car away for the winter properly. I want this little space here because I've just bought a fork truck of all things. Why do I need a fork truck? Well, I've got quite a few aero engines here at home, and I need to move them around. And every time I do, I need to get my mate with a high ab, which is a little bit inconvenient. So there's one, for instance. I have quite a few of them, so a fork truck will help no end. So yeah, the space where the Model A is, I'm going to stick a fork truck there probably as soon as next week, give that a bit of a service, and maybe make a video about a fork truck. How interesting that'll be, I don't know. Alright. So I've come out of the rain, and I found myself a nice bit of heavy steel, and I'm going to cut this shape out shortly. This upright part here, this is going to weld to the side of the chassis. This bit there along the top of the chassis rail, and then somewhere up here we'll have a hole to mount the top of the shock absorber. Exactly where that hole is going to be I haven't determined yet. I'm going to find out the centre of travel on the shock absorber itself, and then we'll sort of go from there. So this is just a rough start. I'll cut it out and offer it up, and we'll get going. There we go, all cut out, cleaned up, and I've just been outside back in the rain to test it, or offer it up to the car as such, and it fits nicely. So I'm going to go with that. So there's going to be one each side of the shock absorber at the top, and obviously both sides to do. So having made this one, I now need to crack on and make another 3. I just made this one and cut it out with a thin cutting disc, and I was contemplating getting the plasma cutter out. I do have a plasma cutter here at home, which normally if I'm doing a fair bit of metal work I would get out, but I think the time I've got it out and fired the compressor up and connected it all up and blah blah blah, it probably would be quicker, but I'm also being a bit lazy, so I'm just going to continue doing the other 3 with a thin disc on the grinder. Okay, 3 more to go. See you in a minute. So there we go, 4 meat cleavers, I think. Still raining outside, so continue doing as much as we can inside on the bench. Now there's going to be one of these either side of the top of the shock absorber. The body of the shock absorber is wider than the eye of the shock absorber, so I'm going to need to weld some spacers on each and every one of these at the top to take up that distance in variation on the top of the shock absorber. So I'm going to run outside and measure that distance, and then I can come back and make up some spacers and weld them on. Okay, so I've drilled 4 holes, 3/8 diameter holes in the top of my meat cleavers, and I've made some spacers to take up the difference in the width between the eye of the shock absorber and the body of the shock absorber itself. So I'm just going to put this nut and bolt through here, nip that down tight, and then I can tack weld the spacers to my meat cleavers, and then I know that everything will be in line when I go to bolt the top shock absorber eye into my top shock absorber mount. Well, there we go, done and dusted really, apart from the obvious of welding them onto the chassis. Spacers are made now, holes all drilled, so yeah, once they're welded on there it should be a 5-minute job to bolt the shock absorbers on. So now I have to decide what to do. I've been in this bloody shed all weekend now, which I don't mind. It's middle of December, there's not a lot else going on. It's still absolutely tipping it down outside. So the decision I have to make now is, am I going to stand out there in a puddle with 180 amps of MIG welder in my right hand and earthing myself to the floor in a wet puddle, or shall I go to the pub?
There you go, Joe.
Thank you. Well, typically, now it's Monday and the working week begins. It's a beautiful blue sky, a lovely sunny day here in Bedfordshire in December. So I got up at first light, or come out here at first light, sorry, and thought I'd weld those shock absorber brackets that I made yesterday on Sunday onto the car. So that sort of finishes up the little jobs that I wanted to do on it before I put it away for winter now. Bit later in the year than what I anticipated, but just had a lot on my plate. But that's good, so the Model A can go into storage now, and I need this little bit of space here on the driveway for a fork truck that I'm going to pick up this weekend and have a play with that. So there we go, Model A is ready to go to bed. I found the 4 hinges off the van originally, the blue ones, 2 of which were absolutely knackered, wouldn't be able to use those. The other 2 were okay, so I've brought them back here to the shed at home. And I had previously bought another pair of rear doors for the van, unseen, from a guy up north who sent them down on a pallet to me, which were absolutely shit. He tucked me up, bless him. But I've been up there, I kept the doors, and they've got 4 hinges on them, but 2 of those were unusable, and 2 that I've brought back that you can see here, the red ones, are seized solid. So along with some strip studs and some rethreading to do, probably going to sandblast them, got to unheat them up and unseize the pins. There's probably going to be another morning's work, if not more, on just those 4 door hinges. So it just shows you how time consuming these restorations can be. You can come in here in the shed sometimes and just be in here all day and walk out and look around and it just looks like nothing's happened, although obviously it has. But there you go, onwards. So we've got all the scabby paint off of the rear door hinges and fitted all 4 of them to the near side and offside, upper and lower. I may have mentioned that a few of them were seized absolutely solid, which obviously wasn't going to be any good. So I got them freed off a bit in the vise, but what I also did was I drilled a tiny hole in each of them through the cast body and into where the pin is. And then I've managed to put some lubricant down there, and that's freed them off a treat. So doors should shut like a Rolls Royce now, hopefully. So at last I seem to have found what appeared to have been the Holy Grail, which is some V6 Cologne Mark III Transit engine mounts. These have come all the way from Ireland. The guy there seemed quite knowledgeable, and he said that these had quite long brackets on, which would have bumped up the postage and would have had to go into quite a big box, which would have originally gone down to an MT75 manual box, which my van did have, but as I've told you, we're going to use an automatic gearbox. So between us, we deemed them unnecessary, and I got him to cut them off in Ireland just to get these into a smaller box, because they are quite heavy, they're cast iron, just to make the postage cheaper as well. So the brother of this one, the other one, I've just bolted on the engine. It confused me for a minute or two because it bolts onto a completely different place than the ones that I took off. But anyway, I've worked it out, and that one's on, quite simply. This one also tried to confuse me as well, in that I just couldn't see how it would fit. And the reason being is, I think, and I'm sure there's people out there might tell me differently perhaps or not, I don't know, that the Cosworth BOA engine, which is round the corner behind me, I'm trying to fit this to, has an oil cooler in this area, and it's also got an oil drain from one of the cylinder heads down into the sump. Both of these foul this part of this mount, so I can only presume that the normal V6 that was fitted in Mark III Transits didn't have an oil drain down from the head. I know they didn't, I remember that from days of old. But perhaps didn't have the oil cooler as well. So what I'm going to have to do here is just cut some more of this engine mounting away up close to this mounting hole here, and then fingers crossed that'll be bolted on in the next half hour or so, and we'll give it a go. Okay, so there's a mount, and I've chopped a couple of lumps off it, and this was the problem I was having. It was fouling this pipe here for this oil return from the cylinder head. But now I've cut that bit off. Quite heavy to hold up. That should sit there nicely now, just like so. So yeah, we're good. Another step forward in getting the engine in. So here we go, door number 2, the better door of the two. Is not. It's pretty horrific. Now I've found at the back, we've got plenty of filler, disguising holes. Oh, and a bit of bin bag. That always works well. Actually, when I did the other Transit, some of the holes were filled up with old socks. This one's bin bags. Yeah, never come across bin bags before. So, I think what we're going to do here, it's gone. What we're going to do here is, I'm not going to cut bits out and let bits in. I'm going to have to cut the complete bottom part of this skin off and make a new one. The reason I'm persevering with these doors is the doors that were on the van, the original doors, weren't terribly rusty, but they had some really difficult dents to deal with. They were dented heavily all around the window areas, which is difficult to get into to repair. So I've been looking and looking and looking for a better pair. This is them. But I've been on it for best part of a year now, looking for good doors, and they just don't seem to exist. So I'm gonna have to work with what I've got, and this is what I've got. So crack on. All right, so the way I think I'm gonna deal with this mess is I'm gonna cut this outer skin of the door bottom off from about here. Now the inner part of the door frame is rotten as well. I'm getting my little finger through the back of it there. Hello, hello. But my intention is to try and save that part of the frame. That remains to be seen. There is quite a lot of corrosion in it, but I'm going to give it a go. So rather than cut the bottom of the door frame off along with the outer skin, I'm going to try and save it. So the way I'm going to do that is Fords have bent this skin over at the bottom and then spot welded it in various different places onto the inner part of the door frame. So I've got myself a spot weld drill, and if you're careful, because it's flat on the end, it will drill through the spot weld and not into the second skin. So there's one that there's one I've done earlier. It's quite hard because the spot weld itself is really hard, so you have to be patient and lean on the drill a bit. So that's what I'm going to do, try and unpick these spot welds and then see if we can save that inner part of the door. I don't have Caden this morning, so I have to do a little bit of filming and then stopping and filming and stopping again. But here we go. This is kind of what's left
of the bottom of the door. Now I've cut the outer skin away, not a lot. So I'm going to try and save this inner skin, I think, as grotty as it looks. I think it's going to clean up in places, but then in other places I'm going to have to cut some of it out and replace it with good metal. And then as we come along here to this side of the door, the whole of this return has just rotted away. Despite me drilling out the spot welds along here, it's still come off and crumbled when I took the outer skin off. So yeah, next stage is to give all this a clean up and see what's left, if anything, and then I'll be fabricating some repair panels, particularly here for this return, and then once that's done, if that's successful, then I'll fabricate a panel for this outer skin. Okay, let's crack on. Well, I've just started making this repair panel for the bottom outer skin of the door, and I've had to put a folder return along the bottom of it. Now, I used to have a 4-foot bender here in the workshop, which took up a lot of room. It was over 4 foot long, probably 3 foot wide with the legs, and I found myself sort of moving it around. It generally used to get in the way, and I didn't really use it that much. So I sold it and replaced it with a smaller 2-foot one, which in hindsight has caused me this problem, because this repair panel I'm making is probably 3 foot long and it won't go in the 2-foot bender. So I've just had to use the hammer and that little anvil there, and it's just not as nice as if I would have been able to put it in a bender. So there you go. But it does make me think you would have to be careful walking around in the shed, especially if you bent over with a 4-foot bender around, eh?
So Caden's back now. We've got Caden filming again. Incidentally, congratulations, Caden. Caden passed his driving test just a couple of days ago, so well done. Yeah, so I've got my repair panel now on the bottom of the door, the good door, and it just leaves now for me to put some filler in here between the original skin and the panel I've made. I'll probably use some fiberglass reinforced filler for the very first skin, just to put a little bit of strength in between where the two skins are welded together, and then go over that with some normal filler, and then we'll get this door hung, and we're really near now.
So there's the repair panel spot welded in, and I've just put on a first initial layer of fiberglass reinforced filler. Idea behind that is it just gives that join a little bit more strength. Although it's spot welded and I don't envisage it moving anywhere, it will just, as I say, add a little bit of strength to the repair. So then I'll get this sanded down, and then we'll carry on and just put a normal filler over the top of that. I doubt I'll get it in one hit. I'm not that good, as I've said before, but a couple of goes I reckon, and she'll be looking like it never happened, I think. Well, there we go. That's the metal work and the filler work finished on the bottom of the transit door. Still got to flip it over, just tidy up the back of the repairs that I've made here, and then go over the whole of the door with a 240 grit in the DA and the back. So there's probably still a couple of hours left in this door, to be fair. Just puffed a little bit of primer on the bottom there just to keep the rust at bay until I get back on it. There you go, another transit door repaired.